Hello, this is Jordan from JustTheGameOfKings.com. Okay, so this was a game played between Robert Byrne and Bobby Fischer at the United States Championship in 1963. So, the game started 1d4, knight f6, c4, g6, king's Indian defense. Black is going to fianchetto his bishop, and then exert a lot of pressure along the a1 h8 diagonal. So white responds by doing the same thing, except on the a8 h1 diagonal. c6 blocks off that bishop's path and prepares a d5. Bishop g2, developing bishop. d5, like I said it was coming. C takes d5. This is an exchange variation. C takes d5. Knight c3, developing a piece. Bishop g7, finally fianchettoing this bishop. And e3. White's already committed his bishop to the a8 h1 diagonal. And now these light squares are very weak, and then they lead right into white's territory. So black just castled, white blocked off a diagonal and developed a knight at the same time. Black developed his knight, white castled, and b6. Black's now preparing to bring his bishop to a6, where it's going to exert lots of pressure down the a6 f1 diagonal. And there's no light squared bishop there to oppose it. So white continues b3, intending to do the same thing with his dark squared bishop. And notice how this position looks very symmetrical. It's kind of amazing how in 11 moves Bobby Fischer will turn this into a mating position. Bishop a6, controlling squares on the a6 f1 diagonal, and white does the same thing. Rook e8, unpinning the pawn, and now preparing to bring the pawn to e5. White plays queen d2 to connect the rooks. It's a simple opening principle. And white plays e5. Now normally this wouldn't be so good because of the fact that after white takes, black now has this isolated d-pawn, which is very weak here, and can be possibly taken at some point. So you normally don't want to do this, but in this case, Fischer gets a lot of activity out of this. So white took, black recaptured, and now rook fd1. This was the wrong rook to move, as you'll see in a second, because it weakens the f2 square, which Fischer will immediately now exploit with knight d3. Now white's just threatening to take the knight on d3, and white will have gotten two minor pieces for their rook, which is tremendous compensation and is actually a material advantage. But Fischer doesn't allow this, and instead he actually sacrifices his knight. And the point of this sacrifice doesn't actually become clear until the very end of the game, which is so remarkable about how Bobby Fischer played. So the king captured, and now knight g4. And now notice how if white continued with king f3, he actually gets mated in a couple of moves. After rook takes d3, king takes g4, bishop c8 check, king f4, and then bishop h6 is checkmate. So that's no good, and white moved king g1, which protects the pawn on h2, but unfortunately allows the knight to take the pawn on e4 with a fork. However, as I just showed you, there was no way for white to prevent that, because if he moved to f3, he would have been checkmated in a couple of moves. So, black continued with knight takes e3, and white went queen d2, and now an amazing move whose intentions do not become obvious until the very end of the game. See if you could find this move. Pause this video for a second. And the move is knight takes g2. You'd ask yourself, why did black just give up the opportunity to win the exchange? And the reason is that now he has this completely open and unopposed diagonal going straight to the king. So white captured, and then d4, opening up the diagonal. White now has to react, or else he's going to lose a piece, so he took on d4, and then bishop to b7, king moved to f1, and then queen d7, and white resigned here. I wonder, can you see why? Again, pause this video if you are not familiar with this game, and try and figure out where this win is. Okay, so say that white responds with a move like queen f2. Now, black will continue with queen to h3, check. And now white is forced to move their king to g1, and now another amazing sacrifice, rook e1, check. And once again, white is forced to play a move that they do not want to make, which is rook takes e1. Notice how if queen takes e1, then queen g2 checkmate wins. So, after rook takes e1, bishop takes e4 wins the game immediately. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've learned something from it, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.